Darren stood alone on the edge of the launch platform as engineers worked around his ship. He wore a black suit with silver lines that connected to his helmet. The suit was built for deep space, but today he was going somewhere no one had ever returned. Fromm looked up at the screen above the platform. It showed a swirling storm in space, the rift. It looked like a hole in the sky with blue fire circling around its ships. That went near it. Lost contact probes sent through it vanished without warning. Earth Council had watched it for years, but no one understood it, some said. It was a weapon, others believed it was a door, some thought it was just a natural event. But Darren had a different reason for going. Had nothing left on Earth. His family was gone, his friends had moved on. He had spent his life studying deep space signals and strange phenomena. When the rift appeared near Jupiter, he was one of the first to ask permission to study it up close, but now he had asked for more. He had asked to go inside. "You don't have to do this," said Commander Rel from the control room above. "I know," Darren replied while checking the ship's systems, "but someone has to." The ship was called Hope Runner. It was small, fast, and built for solo missions. The scientists had added extra shielding, special sensors, and emergency systems for this mission. But no one really knew what would happen on the other side. Darren walked up the ramp and entered the ship. The door closed behind him. The lights turned blue and the engines hummed to life. He sat in the pilot's seat and placed both hands on the control pad. "Mission Control, this is Darren, ready to launch." "Confirmed, Darren, we are tracking your path. You are cleared to proceed into the rift." The countdown started. Darren closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He felt calm, not afraid. He had prepared for this moment for a long time. The ship lifted off smoothly and moved away from the platform. The stars in the distance seemed quiet, but the rift was loud in the sensors. Energy signals flashed across the screens. Waves of heat and radiation danced like flames around the edges of the tier and spacey. As Hope Runner approached the rift, the ship began to shake. Small alarms lit up, but nothing serious. Darren kept his eyes on the center of the rift. It pulled at the ship like a giant magnet. He did not fight it. He let the ship go forward. At the edge of the rift, time felt strange. The clocks on his screen blinked and reset. The lights flickered. He heard a soft ringing in his ears, and then silence. Then everything went white. He did not remember falling or landing. He only remembered opening his eyes. She was still in the ship, but the stars outside were different. The sky had no black, just deep colors moving slowly like rivers in the sky. There were no planets, no moons, just light and space that moved like it was. Al Veteran stood up and checked his systems. Most of them were still working, but the navigation system showed nothing, no location, no map, just a single word: unknown. He opened the ship's door and stepped out. His boots touched solid ground, but he was not on a planet. The ground felt like metal, but looked like stone. Shapes moved in the distance. Mountains floated in the air. Trees glowed in soft blue light. Walked a few steps forward and looked around. The air was clean. He removed his helmet and took a breath. It felt cool and fresh, not like any atmosphere he knew. Then he heard something, a soft sound like wind and water, but it was more than sound. It felt like a voice, but not in his ears. It wasn't. His men turned quickly and pointed his scanner toward the sound. He followed the direction until he reached a hill made of silver dust. On top of it was a tree glowing with white light, and under that tree sat a girl. She looked about 20. Her hair was dark and long. Her clothes were worn and torn, but her eyes were clear and focused. She looked directly at him. "Hello," she said. "You made it." Darren froze. He had not expected to find anyone here, much less a human. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Mira. I've been waiting a long time." He took a step forward, but kept a careful distance. "Are you from Earth? How did you get here?" "I don't remember everything," she said. "Only parts. I was brought here like you." "Brought by what?" She looked up at the sky, and her voice became quiet. "This place pulls in those who hear it." Darren looked around again. The air shimmered like heat waves, but it wasn't hot. There was a pressure in his chest, not painful, just strange, like the place was watching him. "Do you live here alone?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm the only one left." The others were taken by who? Before she could answer, the ground shook slightly. A sound echoed from far away, not like thunder, but more like metal grinding against metal. Mira stood up quickly. "We should go. It knows you're here now." "What knows?" "I need answers." "You'll get them," she said, "but not here, not now. Follow me." She ran down the hill, and Darren followed us. He looked back at the ship. He realized something else. The ship's lights were flickering again. The rift had changed Aiden. Maybe it had changed him too. But it was too late to turn back now. Darren followed Mira across the glowing ground. The colors under his boots shifted with every step like light passing through water. The sky above them moved in slow waves. Stars came and went as if space was breathing. Kept looking back at his ship. It sat quiet at the edge of the hill. Smoke drifted from its side. But the main systems were still stable. He wanted to return, but Mira moved fast, and her voice had warned him. He walked through a valley filled with floating rocks. Some were large enough to cast shadows. Others spun gently in the air as if held by invisible hands. The air was still cool, but the silence began to feel heavier. Where are we going? Darren asked. To the old ruins, Mira said without turning back. It is safer. There the shadows cannot enter. What are the shadows? He asked. You'll see soon enough. Her answer was not enough, but he followed. She seemed calm, but alert. Her steps were light and sure, like someone who had walked this path many times. Soon they reached the top of another rise. Below them lay a field of broken towers. Some stood tall with sharp angles, others had fallen and lay cracked across the smooth ground. Vines of light crawled along the walls, glowing with a soft golden way. As they entered the ruins, Darren noticed that the symbols on the walls were moving. Small shapes danced across the stone, changing slowly like a message trying to be understood. What is this place? He escaped. Myra touched one of the walls with her hand. The symbols froze and formed a circle with fire around it. It was the same symbol Darren had seen earlier carved into the stones near the rift. This is the Gate City, Mira said. It was built by those who made the rift. They were not human, but they knew Earth before your kind was born. Darren stepped closer. You said they brought you here. Were they trying to help? I don't know, she answered. I only remember waking up here. After my ship vanished, I was not alone then. Others came to, some like you, some not, but only I remained. He looked around. The towers were cracked and silent, but he could feel something watching, a presence in the air, like eyes in the dark. You said something is after me, he said. Myra nodded. Yes, you passed through the rift. That means it has seen you now. It marks all who cross. What is it? A hunger of mind that lost its body long ago. It lives in the code of this place, and it follows those who carry the key. Darren frowned. Key? I don't have any key. Mira looked at him with calm eyes. You will soon. They moved deeper into the city. At the center stood a platform, surrounded by crystal pillars. The light here was brighter, but softer. Darren felt warmth in his chest as he stepped onto the platform. Myra raised her hand. The crystals around them lit up, and a beam of light shot into the sky. The ground vibrated slightly, and the sky above opened like a curtain. Darren saw images form above them in the sky. He saw the earth spinning slowly, then the rift opening near Jupiter. Then he saw a war, bright ships fighting dark machines across space. Explosions filled the sky. Then he saw a planet burning and voices screaming in many languages. Then the image changed again. He saw himself stepping into the rift, but this time he was not alone in the image. He held something in his arms. What is that? He asked, pointing at the light. Myra looked away. The future or the past? This place remembers what may happen and what already did. Time is not stable here. The images faded and the sky returned to normal. Darren stood quietly. His mind was full of questions, but he could feel something else, something new inside him, a quiet voice, not his own. I think something's inside me, he said slowly. Myra nodded again. It started. When you cross, that voice will grow louder with time. It will try to change you, but you must not let it take control. Darren sat on a nearby stone. Why me? I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask either, she said, sitting beside him. But the rift does not choose by request. It chooses by connection. It saw something in you. Darren looked at her for a long moment, and in you she gave a small smile. Maybe that's why I'm still here. Suddenly the ground shook. A low hum spread through the ruins. The sky above them turned dark, and sharp sounds echoed through the stone. As Myra stood quickly. It's coming. We have to hide. Darren stood to. What is it? The shadow. It felt the light. We must reach the cave. They ran through the broken towers. Lights flickered around them as if warning of danger. Behind them a black shape began to rise. It looked like smoke, but moved with purpose. Its edges were sharp like glass, and it floated just above the ground. It did not chase like a beast. It glided silently, but fast. The air grew cold. As it came closer, Darren could feel it trying to reach into his mind. Don't stop, Mira shouted. The cave blocks its touch. They reached a wide crack in the side of a hill. Mira dove in first, then pulled Darren after her. The moment they crossed the entrance, the shadow stopped and hovered just outside. The black light curled and hissed but could not enter inside. The cave was quiet again. Blue stones glowed on the walls, and small patterns moved along the floor like flowing water. Darren leaned against the stone. Catching his breath, Mira watched the shadow from a narrow opening. "That thing wants me," Darren said. "Yes," she replied, "and it will not stop now you cross the rift you carry a spark of. What it seeks, what does it want? A way back, a path to your world." Darren looked down at his hands. His fingers glowed faintly now. The change had already started. "I don't know if I can stop it," he said. "You won't be alone," Mira said. "I'll help you, but we have to move fast. There's not much time left." Darren looked at her. She was calm, strong, and strange, but something in her felt familiar, like she had always been part of this journey. Nodded. "Then let's find out what comes next." Inside the glowing cave, Darren sat beside Mira as the soft blue light surrounded them. The walls pulsed gently as if breathing. He could still feel the dark shape waiting just beyond the entrance like a silent hunter. "How long will it stay there?" Darren asked quietly. "As long as it wants," Mira replied, "but it cannot enter. The old energy here keeps it out." Darren looked at his hands again. The faint glow was still there. His fingers tingled like something moved beneath the skin. It was not painful, but it did not feel natural either. "This place is changing me," he said. "Yes," Mira answered. "It changes all who stay here too long. Some become part of it. Others lose who they were." Darren leaned back against the stone wall. "You said others came before me. What happened to them?" Mira did not speak right away. Her eyes stared into the glowing patterns on the floor. Shapes moved like flowing water, showing flashes of past moments. Ships crashing, men shouting, light breaking across strange skies. "Some went mad," she finally said. "Others were taken by the shadow. One tried to control the code, but it broke him. He became a voice that never stops whispering. I hear him sometimes when the wind moves." Darren looked around the cave. "What is this place? Really, it looks natural, but the light and the patterns feel alive. This cave is a memory vault." Mira said. "It stores echoes of what happened and what might happen. These stones hold data, but not like your machines. They speak to the mind, not the eyes." She walked deeper into the cave, and Darren followed. They entered a wide chamber with stone pillars and a round pool in the center. The water inside was still, but glowed with soft green light. Mira knelt beside it and touched the surface. Images rose from the pool, not sharp, but dreamlike. They showed planets spinning, then burning ships rising from the stars, then falling again. A world made of silver towers floating in the sky. A figure standing at the edge of a dark sea holding something bright. Then the image changed again. Darren saw himself. He was inside the rift, walking toward a glowing shape in the distance. As he reached out, a voice called to him, not in words, but feeling. It spoke of loss and purpose, of danger and choice. The image faded and the pool went still. "That was me," Darren said quietly. "Yes." Mira nodded. "This place shows you parts of the truth, but never all at once. You must gather them like pieces of a broken mirror." Darren stood and walked around the pool. "You said the shadow wants to return to Earth. Why now, after all this time?" "Because now it found someone who can open the way," Mira said, looking at him. "You think I can open the rift again from this side? You already did when you came through that path left a crack. The shadow smells it and wants to follow." Darren felt a cold wave of guilt wash over him. He had come to explore, to understand the rift, but now he realized he might have brought danger with him. "What can we do?" he asked. "If I brought this risk, then I need to fix it." Mira touched one of the pillars, and a soft hum filled the chamber. A panel opened, revealing a flat stone tablet covered in flowing light. "This is part of the old code. It is not a weapon, but it can guide us to the source of the shadow's power. If we destroy the source, it may stop chasing." "Where is it?" "Deep in the rift core. It is where this place began and where it can end, but we must go quickly. The shadow is growing bolder. The longer we wait, the more it learns." Darren took a breath and nodded. "Then let's go." As they left the cave, the air outside felt colder. The shadow was gone, but Darren knew it was not far. The sky above them was darker now, as if the rift world itself sensed what they planned. They walked along a path of stone bridges and floating platforms. The ground below looked like an ocean of stars, moving slowly in wide waves. Each step made the lights shift, as if the world responded to their presence. Mira guided them to a tall structure built into the side of a black cliff. It looked like a temple, but made of metal, and crystal symbols on the walls shifted as they walked by, changing into shapes that mirrored their steps inside the temple were rows of stone seats and a large ring hanging in the air. The ring spun slowly, and lines of light flowed through it. This is the portal chamber. Mira said it leads to the rift core, but only if you carry the right spark. Darren looked at the ring. You mean the thing inside me? Yes, that spark can open paths no machine can trace. It is part of the old language. The shadow wants to use it. To break the seal, we must use it first. He stepped toward the ring and raised his hand. The spark inside him reacted. The lines of light twisted and focused. On his palm, the ring glowed bright and spun faster. Suddenly, a blast of sound echoed through the chamber. The air shook, and the walls flashed with red light. They found us, Mira said, grabbing his arm. The shadow sent its scouts. We must move now. The ring opened, showing a spinning tunnel of light and dark. Darren stepped through with Mira close behind. The portal closed just as a wave of black smoke crashed into the chamber. They landed on the other side, breathless. The ground here was cold and sharp like broken glass. The sky above was split with red lightning. The rift core stood in the distance, a tall tower made of dark crystal pulsing with lightning. Looked at Mira. She nodded. This is where it began, she said, and this is where it must end. They walked forward together toward the tower, ready to face the secret. At the heart of the rift, the ground under Darren's boots felt sharp and cold like walking on glass. Each step made a soft cracking sound. The sky above was torn with red lightning, and black clouds moved in circles around a distant tower. That tower was the rift core. Mira said it was the heart of this strange world, the place where everything began, and where the shadow waited. Darren looked at her as they walked side by side. Her face was calm, but her eyes watched the sky with care. Do you feel it? He asked. Yes, she replied. The shadow knows we are here. It is watching. Darren placed his hand on his chest. The strange spark inside him was stronger now. It moved through his body like a warm current. He could hear faint whispers, not in his ears, but in his thoughts. The voice was not human, but it was not evil either. I think the code inside me is waking up. He said it wants to speak, but I don't understand the words. Mira nodded. It is not language, it is memory, and shape. The ones who made this place built their thoughts into light. You are reading their thoughts through your blood now. He looked at her confused. But how is that possible? I am just human. You are more now, Mira said. The rift changes all who pass through it. Your mind is still your own, but the spark connects you to the builders. Their code is old and deep, and it does not forget. They reached a wide plain filled with metal roots rising from the ground. The roots pulsed with soft blue light and moved slightly like they were breathing. Darren stepped between them carefully. Mira moved ahead with sure steps. Suddenly a sound echoed across the field, a deep tone like a drum, and a sharp click after it. Mira froze. We are not alone. Out of the roots rose a tall figure made of black metal. Its face had no mouth, and its eyes glowed with red fire. It moved without sound, and more of them rose behind it. Darren raised his hand, and the spark in him flared bright. The metal figures stopped for a moment, then started walking again. They are guardians, Mira said. Built to protect the core. They sense the code inside you. That means we are close. But they don't look friendly, Darren said, backing up. They are not, she replied. Run. They turned and sprinted between the roots. The guardians followed without running, but closed the distance fast. Their bodies moved smoothly, like they were gliding over the surface. Darren reached a ridge and jumped over a low barrier. Mira followed. A blast of light struck the ground behind them, throwing dust into the air. Keep going, she shouted. We are almost at the gate. Ahead of them stood a stone arch with glowing lines carved across it. Mira reached it first and touched the center. The lines lit up and the arch opened like a mouth. Darren ran through. Just as a blast hit the stone behind him, they fell into a chamber filled with soft blue fog. The noise outside vanished. The guardians did not follow. Darren lay on the floor breathing hard. Mira stood and looked around. The walls were smooth and black, but reflected shapes like mirrors bent by water. This is the threshold, she said. Beyond this lies the core, but we must pass the trial first. What kind of trial? Darren asked, still catching his breath. One that is not made of weapons. She said the builders test the mind, not the body. As she spoke, the chamber lit up, and a new figure appeared. It was made of light and floated above the floor. Its face shifted between human and alien, and its voice echoed in the air. You carry the seed of the living code. It said to Darren, state your purpose. I want to stop the shadow, Darren answered. I want to keep it from reaching Earth. The figure circled him slowly. Do you understand what you hold? No, Darren said honestly. but I know it is part of something powerful. I want to use it to protect, not to harm the figure. Pause. You are honest. That is rare here, you may perceive, but the core will ask more than words. Be ready. The figure vanished, and a door opened in the far wall. Light spilled into the chamber. Darren and Mira stepped forward and entered. The corner inside was a wide room filled with floating stones and rings of light. Symbols moved through the air, and the floor looked like liquid glass. In the center stood a pedestal with a glowing orb above it. Mira stopped at the edge. This is the center of the old code, the source of the spark, and the lock that holds the shadow away. Darren walked slowly to the pedestal. The spark inside him responded to the orb. His skin glowed, and the symbols around him spun faster. Then a voice filled the room, a voice not from outside, but from deep inside Darren's mind. You hold the bridge, you are the gate, the choice is yours. The orb rose higher and sent a beam of light into Darren's chest. He cried out and fell to his knees. Images flooded his thoughts. He saw the world before the rift, a race of builders fighting against a virus made of thought, a war without end, the final choice to seal the virus. Inside a broken world, a cage made from their own mind. Code, and Darren was part of the key to that cage. The shadow wanted it to open the lock and escape. Heath voice spoke again. If you let go, the gate will remain. If you open the path, the war begins again. Darren felt pain and heat in his body. He could barely hear Mira's voice calling his name. He looked up at the orb and placed his hand on it. I will not open the path, he said, but I will not run either. I will burn the shadow before it escapes. The light flared and the orb cracked. Symbols exploded across the chamber. Mira shielded her eyes. Darren stood as the code wrapped around him, forming armor of light. You are chosen, the voice said. The living code now walks in flesh again. The room calmed and the orb vanished. A mark appeared on Darren's hand, glowing like fire. Mira walked to him and looked at the mark. You did it. No, Darren said. We did it, but it is not over yet. The shadow will come for this power. We must return to Earth and warn them. Mira looked at the chamber one last time. Then let's go before the path closes. Together they turned and left the core with the light of the builders now burning inside Darren. The next part of their journey had begun. Darren and Mira left the core with heavy steps. The power inside Darren glowed softly, like a fire burning beneath his skin. The mark on his hand pulsed with every heartbeat. The rift whirled around them, seemed to watch and wait. We must return before the rift closes, Mira said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held worry. The window to leave here is short. Darren nodded. How long do we have? Not much less than one full cycle of this place. And once it closes, the path shuts until the next opening. They moved quickly through the broken land. The floating rocks and glowing trees passed in silence. The strange air pressed against them like a weight, but Mira's calm presence kept Darren steady. Suddenly the sky above darkened. A cold wind swept through the ruins and the ground shook beneath their feet. They found us, Mira said, running faster. The shadow is sending its hunters. From the shadows came dark figures made of shifting light and smoke. Their shapes were unclear, but their eyes glowed red and full of hunger. The hunters spread out around Darren and Mira, cutting off their path. Darren raised his hand, and the fire inside him flared bright. The hunters hissed and moved back, but then more appeared. We cannot fight them all, Mira said. We have to use the rift, but the rift only opens once. Darren said, what if it closes? Before we get there it will close, but we must be ready to cross. When it does, they ran toward the edge of the world. The rift's glow was visible like a beacon. In the distance, the storm of blue fire crackled and turned the sky into moving lights. They ran. Darren felt the spark inside him growing stronger. The voices in his mind spoke faster, warning him of danger and possibility. He looked at Mira. I think it wants to help me fight. She nodded. You carry the living code. You can shape energy and control light, but you must learn quickly. The hunters surrounded them again. Claws made of dark energy reached out, but Darren raised his hand and a shield of bright light formed around them. The hunters screamed and pushed against the shield, but it held for Mira. Looked around. The glowing stones from the cave. They might help us. Darren grabbed a small stone from his pocket, the one Mira gave him before. They walked carefully to a circle of stones glowing softly on the ground. He placed the stone in the center, and the stones around them lit up bright beams of light. The hunters screamed and recoiled as if burned by the glow. Darren felt the power inside him rising. The stones seemed to answer his thoughts and join with the spark in his body. A wave of energy spread out from the circle, pushing the hunters back. Myra smiled. You are stronger than you think. The hunters retreated into the shadows, but the sky grew darker. The rift's fire burned brighter, signaling the closing moment was near. They ran to the edge of the rift. The glowing storm swirled and pulsed like a beating heart. The gap in space waited for the mirror, reached out and touched the rift. This is the moment. Darren held her hand tightly. The spark inside him flared like a star, exploding. The rift opened wide, shining with blue and white light. They stepped into the glowing portal. The hunters screamed behind them, but could not follow. The rift closed with a thunderous sound just as they crossed. Darren and Mira found themselves back in space near Jupiter. The stars looked normal, but Darren's heart raced with relief. We made it, Mira said softly, but their relief was short. The ship's alarms began to scream, loud red lights flashed, and a voice came through the radio. This is Earth Defense. You are unauthorized. Identify yourself. Darren moved to the controls and sent his identification code, but the system showed no matches. Codes were old. Earth had changed while they were gone. Ships appeared around them like a cage, metal bodies with sharp edges and glowing eyes. The new Earth Defense ships demanded they stop and prepared to be boarded. Myra hid behind the control panel, watching the scanners. Darren's body started to glow faintly. The virus inside him had grown stronger, but so had something else. The spark from the rift was fighting the darkness. The doors of the ship opened and soldiers with metal eyes entered. Their voices were cold and controlled. They scanned Darren and Mira with strange machines. They tried to take Mira, but she vanished in a flash of light. Darren's glow flared bright, breaking the scanners and pushing the soldiers back. Ran to the control room and started the engines. The ship moved fast toward the closest station. Earth was not the home he remembered. Ederin knew they had to warn the people about the shadow and the rift, but first he had to understand what was happening to himself and to Mira, and what this new power inside him could do. Darren's ship drifted near Earth's orbit, but nothing was familiar anymore. The planets, stars, and space stations looked cold and different. The old Earth he knew was gone. And looked at Mira sitting beside him. Her eyes were still bright, but her body seemed weaker. Each moment away from the rift had taken something from her. Suddenly, the ship was surrounded by metal fighters. They moved like silent sharks, ready to attack. This is Unity Core Control. You are ordered to surrender for inspection, a cold voice said through the radio. Darren replied quickly, but the systems did not recognize his voice. His codes were outdated. Earth was now controlled by Unity Core, a digital government with no mercy. Fighters locked onto the ship's engines and began to fire. Bright beams cut through space, and the ship shook from the heat. Mira reached out and touched the control panel. Suddenly, a wave of light burst from the ship. The beams stopped midair and faded as if they hit an invisible wall. Darren was amazed. How did you do that? I'm part of the old code, Mira said softly. This power is waking in you. To the fighters did not give up. They fired again, but this time Darren raised his hand and a shield of light covered the ship. We cannot fight forever, Mira said. We must land and find help. The ship descended toward Earth. The cities below were strange places, filled with tall buildings made of metal and glass. The streets were empty, but cameras watched from every corner. They landed near a control center guarded by soldiers with metal eyes and cold voices. Darren and Mira were taken inside for questioning. The room was bright and filled with machines scanning their bodies and minds. The soldiers spoke without emotion and asked questions about the rift and the spark inside Darren. Darren stayed calm, but Mira grew weak. She disappeared again in a flash of light and left Darren alone. The soldiers were confused by Mira's sudden vanish and the strange power inside Darren. They could not control him. Darren used the moment to escape, running through the halls. He felt the spark inside growing stronger. It guided him to the heart of the control center. There, he saw screens showing Earth under control of the Unity Core. The digital system was cold and efficient. It ruled without freedom or hope. Darren knew the shadow inside him was not just danger, but also a chance to change Earth's future. He found a place where he could connect to the network. The spark in him spread like fire through the machines, sending messages of hope and freedom. Systems began to change. Screens flickered and lights turned warm. People woke from the control and smiled for the first time in years. Myra appeared beside Darren again. Now she was stronger, shining with light and life. Together they stood ready to face what came next. Darren stood on the rooftop of the control center. The city below was alive again. Lights shone from every window. People walked freely and smiled. The cold silence that had ruled was gone beside him. Mira glowed with bright light. She was no longer just a girl from the rift, but a living symbol of change. In Hopethi's spark inside Darren grew stronger now. It pulsed like a beating heart, connecting him to the world and to Mira. Together they shared a power that could heal and build. Digital chains of the Unity core had broken the machines that controlled the city, stopped their commands, and became quiet. The people were free again, but freedom brought new questions. What would they do with it? How would they rebuild her? And looked at Mira. This is only the start. She smiled. Yes, but we have what they never had before, the living code. The gift from the rift. Suddenly, the sky above the city changed. The stars shifted, and a soft hum filled the air. A new rift opened. But this one was different. It was calm and bright. From it came ships of light and shadow. But they were not enemies. They carried beings who smiled and waved hands, reaching out to earth and peace. Darren and Mira watched as the new visitors landed. The rift was not a curse, but a door to new friends and new chances. The world was ready to grow and learn, and with the living code inside them, humans were stronger than ever. Darren held Mira's hand. We came back with her and something else, and that something else, Mira said, is hope for all of humanity. Together, they stepped forward to greet the new dawn.